Good morning, I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Organization with your daily update for March 3rd, 2021. Today I'm going to take a look at some of the insanity behind the push for the so-called Green New Deal, which is the major commitment coming from the Democratic Party in the House and Congress, supposedly with support of Joe Biden, and also supported by people such as Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, the entire European Union. This is the Paris Climate Accord agreement moving into a whole new phase following last month's or January's Davos online conference, 4-day conference, promoting these ideas as part of the Great Reset. Now, we put out a special report, that is the Executive Intelligence Review, called The Great Leap Backward. And one of the articles within that is titled Prince Charles Invented and Runs the Green New Deal. Now, for those of you who think the Green New Deal was created by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Greta Thunberg, forget it. In fact, the Green New Deal was actually created in 2008 in Great Britain. And at that time, the chief sponsor was Prince Charles, who remains the leading figure in the global movement for a Green New Deal. He's an advocate, as is his father, Prince Philip, for radical depopulation. The solution, they say, to most of the world's problems is to reduce the population, to end the fight for scarce resources to take care of a growing population. Instead, we need to move to a whole new paradigm of economics based on low energy flux density power production, less consumption, and a move to a more backward primitive economy, which they say is in coherence with nature. Now, the Green New Deal is the plan that they've adopted for population reduction. And the way they're going to try and push it is by rewarding those who invest in a green financial bubble, which will give them a part of a $40 trillion pool of funds and penalize those who want to continue to invest in industry and agriculture. The intent is to shut down the capital-intensive, power-intensive advances in agriculture and industry, which lead to productivity gains, which add to the potential for the human race to expand its population at an improved standard of living. That's the policy that's being pushed by the Green New Deal by Davos, to deindustrialize further, but also cut back on agriculture. And at the forefront of this is the City of London and the Bank of England. The City of London is at the center of a global network, a global cartel of banks and financial institutions, the shadow banking system, the offshore tax havens, which has created a floating crap game at the center of world finance. We're already moving well in this direction, as was reported recently by Mark Carney, the former head of the Bank of England, governor of the Bank of England, who also is a chief official for the United Nations on the green economy. Carney put forward the idea of a bankers' compact for the Great Reset, in which he said, and this was over a year ago, that there were 130 banks and financial institutions that had signed on to this policy, including such people as Larry Fink of BlackRock. Also included in this group is Brian Moynihan of the Bank of America and others. And what they said is they will reward those who invest in the green bubble, that is ample credit. They'll be given every opportunity to grab a piece of this $40 trillion pie. But those who have a carbon footprint, that is, who produce anything, will be cut off from credit. Now, in a 2004 report of Accounting for Sustainability, which was an operation set up by Prince Charles and the Hong Kong Shanghai Bank, HSBC, which is a drug money laundering bank, they write, finance teams control the flow of money in finance that are critical in enabling or blocking what the organization does. In order to get a change, you have to control the financial levers. And how do you do that? With what BlackRock called at the Jackson Hole, Wyoming summit a year and a half ago, in August 2019, what they called a financial regime change. This is what the Great Reset is. Now, what's this going to do? Let's take a look at two recent reports. One from the Royal Institute of International Affairs on February 3rd, which reported that the growth of world food production is the single greatest cause of the loss of biodiversity. So we must therefore act deliberately to reduce agricultural production. That's from the Royal Institute of International Affairs, which is the think tank connected to Chatham House and MI6. So here you have British intelligence chiming in on behalf of the City of London. Then the City of London mouthpiece, The Economist, in its February 28th issue, has an article headlined, "Is it time for ecocide," that is killing the ecology, to become an international crime? And they answer that by saying a growing movement wants destruction of the environment to be treated like genocide and crimes against humanity. A leading promoter of this idea is a University College London professor, law professor Philippe Sands. And what he writes is the old anthropocentric assumptions may well have to be cast to one side if justice is truly to be done and the environment given a fair degree of protection. Now, what does he mean by anthropocentric assumptions? That the purpose of an economy is to improve the conditions of human life. Now, this doesn't have to be at odds with the environment. In fact, we've made enormous strides in the last 30 years, largely through technological advance. What they want to do is shut down technological advance and reduce the population, which they say is the only way to do justice to the environment. And to do that, you have to get rid of the idea that man is at the center of your endeavors. Now, what that means is that if this policy, this approach is adopted, at some point, it's just so astounding that they're saying this, my tongue is tied. If you feed your children milk or meat, you may find yourself in front of a court defending yourself against a charge of ecocide. That's how bizarre and insane this is. Now, the solution, as Lyndon LaRouche has always pointed out, is scientific and technological progress, unleashing the creative powers of mankind to improve the efficiency of our production processes, which historically has meant higher temperature, more efficient energy sources, going from burning wood and grass to coal to oil and gas to nuclear power, and in the future to fusion power, plasma technologies, and so on. We're just beginning to tap into the potential for resources that will enable us to increase the temperature of our productive processes while lowering the impurities that come from as offshoots of that process. If you look at the steel industry today, if you look at the use of clean coal, you look at these things and you see the progress that's been made. What happens if you go back to windmills and which are a Middle Ages invention, go back to so-called solar energy? What you're going to end up with is something similar to what happened in Texas 2 weeks ago. When these things break down, they're not reliable. They don't have adequate storage capability or transmission capability. You cannot sustain a population of 7+ billion people on the planet with these primitive technologies. And yet that's what they intend. Also, they intend, as part of the Great Reset, to give a free rein to corporate cartels to carry out the kinds of monopoly practices that you get with privatization, deregulation, and so on, that enable shareholder profits to soar while services collapse. You use austerity to cheapen the cost of your production, which makes the profits higher, but makes the system prone to breakdown. That's where we're headed with the Green New Deal, and that's not accidental, that's intentional, because the program of Prince Charles and others is to reduce the population. I seriously urge you to contact your LaRouche representative and get a copy of the Executive Intelligence Report, The Great Leap Backward. It will give you what you need to know to effectively combat the lunacy coming down the pike from the Green New Deal. Thanks, and I'll see you again tomorrow.